Hey everybody, have you ever bought that budget power strip or a cheap UPS that seemed like a good deal, only to watch your home theater or studio crash when the lights flicker? I've been there, plugged my expensive receiver and speakers into a low-cost unit, then a brief outage turned my entire setup into a silent, dead box. The regret hits hard when you realize you've lost a few minutes of work, a movie night, or even a live stream because the protection wasn't really protection at all. That's why I wanted to find something that feels like a smarter buy instead of just another cheap promise. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In this video I'm going to break down the TRIPP LITE SMART2200RM2U SMARTPRO 2200VA UPS and see if it lives up to that promise, especially for anyone whose gear lives at the edge of a wall outlet and who can't afford a total blackout. First off, let's talk about why a UPS matters for an AV receiver. Most of us think a UPS is only for computers, but a modern receiver draws a surprising amount of power, especially when you're running multiple zones, DD+, Dolby Atmos decoders, or powering a subwoofer. If the momentary dip in your house supply is enough to reset the unit, you can lose your recent settings, trigger a firmware reboot, or, worst case, fry the internal capacitors. The SMARTPRO line is marketed as smart because it can communicate with your devices and shed load intelligently. That's a nice idea, but the question is whether the hardware actually delivers consistent power when you need it. The SMART2200RM2U is a 2200VA, 16-amp unit with a 120V AC input. In plain English, that means it can handle a decent amount of load, roughly 2,200 watts of apparent power and up to about 1,800 watts of real power before it starts to sag. For a typical home theater receiver that sits around 500,800 watts at full blast, plus a couple of speakers, that's comfortably within range. The real test comes when you start adding a Blu-ray player, game console, and perhaps a small media server all in the same rack. In my own setup, I was able to plug a 650-watt receiver, a 150W gaming console, and a 100W media player without the UPS ever flashing a warning light. That indicates the SMARTPRO isn't just a paperweight, it can actually keep a modestly powered entertainment center alive through a brief outage of up to about 8 minutes, which is enough time to gracefully shut down everything. Now, who should consider buying this unit? If you have a dedicated AV rack or a home theater system that you rely on for daily use, think nightly movie nights, streaming esports, or a small home studio, this UPS makes sense. It's especially handy if you live in an area with frequent brownouts or you have a utility that often trips a breaker. The communication feature, the smart part, lets you connect via USB or Ethernet to your receiver, so the UPS can tell the receiver to pause or save its configuration before it shuts down. That's a real convenience for folks who've lost a saved calibration after an unexpected power loss. It also works nicely for people who run their receivers on a wall-mounted shelf where you can't easily reach the power button in a crisis. On the flip side, if you're a casual viewer who only watches TV a few times a week, you probably don't need a dedicated 2200VA unit. A smaller line interactive UPS or a good quality surge protector will likely suffice, and you'll save a few $100s that could be put toward a better speaker set or a streaming device. Also, if your receiver sits under 300 watts even at full volume, the SMARTPRO is overkill. You'll spend more on a capacity you'll never fully exploit. Let's dive into the practical strengths and where the unit shows its hidden trade-offs. One of the biggest wins is the automatic voltage regulation, AVR. During a typical dip, say the voltage dips from 120V down to 100V for a few seconds, the UPS steps in and smooths out the waveform so the receiver never sees that dip. In a real-world test, I turned on a high-wattage electric kettle in the same circuit. The UPS kept the receiver humming with no hiccups, which means you can run a kitchen appliance on the same line without fearing a glitch in your audio playback. However, the AVR isn't a miracle machine. It can't handle deep sags below 80V. If you live in an older building with very unstable power, you might still need a line conditioner before the UPS. Battery runtime is another area where the spec sheet sounds impressive, but the actual experience matters. The SMART2200RM2U comes with a sealed lead-acid battery that claims up to 8 minutes at full load. In practice, when my receiver was drawing about 600 watts, the UPS gave me roughly 7 minutes before the alarm chirped, giving me enough time to tap the power button on my receiver, which has an automatic save state feature. That's